Hi, it's Raina Nisus, your host of a Season of Caring podcast. We're continuing our Best of 2025 series on the podcast today, and I'm sharing about the second most listened to episode of the year, a conversation that struck a deep chord with so many caregivers. This features a woman whose transparency, courage, and humor made her story unforgettable. From fixer to faithful companion, stories of hope with Jackie Freeman. What happens when a lifelong overachiever and fixer meets a season she can't control? Jackie opens her heart about caring for two of the people she loved most. Her husband, who lived 7 years beyond a terminal brain cancer diagnosis, and her father, who journeyed through Alzheimer's. Raised with a strong, I can handle anything mindset, she found herself in a season where grit wasn't enough. With honesty and unexpected humor, Jackie shares how God gently shifted her from doing it all to letting go, and how that shift brought healing, connection, and even joy. One of her most powerful discoveries came through what the memory care staff called Perry's time, the gift of giving space to someone to process on their own, at their own pace. This episode also includes practical insights Jackie wishes every caregiver knew, like keeping a medical notebook, receiving hospice as a blessing rather than a loss, and creating room for spiritual renewal when you feel depleted. And tucked inside her story is a beautiful reminder for all of us. You don't have to do it all to love well. Whether you're running on empty or simply need encouragement today, I hope Jackie's story brings you the same hope it brought so many listeners this year. Jackie Freeman is a writer, speaker, and caregiver advocate who understands the sacred weight of walking alongside a loved one in their final season. She cared for her beloved husband, Roy, through his courageous journey with brain cancer, while also supporting her father through the challenges of Alzheimer's disease. Jackie knows the overwhelming demands and deep heartache of caregiving, but also the surprising beauty found in everyday moments of grace. Her story, From Fixer to Faithful, a story of love, loss, and letting go, invites others to release the pressure to do it all and instead lean into God's faithful presence. With honesty, humor, and hope, Jackie speaks of feeling unseen and worn thin, reminding them they are not alone. Today, she encourages others to live content, love well, and care without regrets, because even in loss, there is a lasting purpose. Welcome, Jackie. We're so glad to have you here today.
Thank you, Raina, for the invitation.
Let's just start off by having you introduce us a little bit to your caregiving seasons and what they look like for you.
Well, Raina, let's go back to when I was a little girl. I grew up being the fixer. I was the go-to to get something done and do it right. If you had a Christmas tea, I could color coordinate everything and have it done without a sweat on my brow. And I had two parents who adored me. I was their only child. And so the pressure to be perfect and was there. They loved me, but that was how I was raised. You see, Raina, I grew up at the height of the feminist movement. I could break out in song and your audience would know. I can bring home the bacon, fry it up in the pan, never, never let you forget I am my man, because I'm a woman. Well, that was how I grew up, believing everything was mine to fix and I could do anything. As a little girl, I would say to my mother, when I'm the mama and you're the little girl, it's going to this way. I mean, I was in charge. My parents, as they aged, I was caring for them. My father was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and so keeping track of helping my mother, assisting my mother in medical appointments, making sure their diets were really good. Of course, I always did have a little dark chocolate for my mother, but anyway, that's said. I loved being with my father. I was the apple of his eye, and he was mine. My father, even in the disease, he made it easy to care for him, and I know that that is not always the setting for many caregivers, but I was blessed with that. My dad would love music. My mother was a wonderful pianist. And whenever she tickled those ivories, my daddy would straighten up, his eyes would twinkle, and he would start patting his thigh right to the beat of the song. So keeping that as much a part of his life is what we tried to do. But in the middle of that, as if that wasn't enough, my husband was diagnosed with brain cancer in 2004, glioblastoma. He was given 6 months to live, but he lived 7.5 years. So I was simultaneously caring for my husband, his treatments, and his medical records, making sure he ate well as much as anyone else, and my father and my mother. I remember saying to my mother at various times, Mom, I don't want this disease to take both of you, because it was consuming to her. She was a wonderful caregiver. She was one of those women that you could know she was standing behind the scenes, supporting you in whatever way possible. And I needed to mimic that for her. And so that was where my caregiving role began.
Sadly, life doesn't just throw us one thing at a time, does it? It always seems like there's so much, especially with a journey like Alzheimer's, because it does last for so long and there is no normal. It has a tendency to change so frequently. So that would definitely be difficult to be caring for both of them at the same time and just kind of feeling pulled in both directions. I'm sure there were many days where you just thought, how do I be there for both?
It really is a moment in time when you say, I don't know how I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know the Lord, our words need to say, Lord, I wonder how you're going to handle this. You see that overachieving, stubborn overachiever that I was. I thought everything was mine to do and realized that everything isn't mine to do. I wasn't really playing God, but in some ways, I mean, I knew God existed. He created the heavens and the earth and all of us. But I was certain he needed me to take care of my little corner of the world. But oh my, Raina, we are not to carry it all ourselves. I was struck by the passage in Exodus 18 where Moses' father-in-law, he says, Jethro says, you're going to burn yourself out, Moses, doing all of this yourself. And if someone like Moses, a man of God, one of the patriarchs of the Old Testament, is on the verge of burnout, we need to take a page from his story to say, how can I make that part of who I am? So finding ways to accept help, realizing that asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It is knowing there are resources. I learned early trying to do everything myself was often a case scenario where I was denying someone an opportunity of a blessing, of helping. When someone said to me, Jackie, you make it look so easy. Why don't you let me help you? I want to be blessed. Well, that just cut me right to the core. I certainly don't want to stop someone from receiving a blessing. It became part of who I was. My mother, one of the greatest gifts that she did give me was move my father closer to my farm. I could help more when he wasn't as far, an hour and a half away from me. So truly a blessing. That was a hard sell for my mother. She believed we should do everything in the house, and that was her role. But their house layout wasn't conducive for someone as his level of care exceeded and his abilities decreased. So we found a wonderful facility that handled memory care near me and my mother. It was just a blessing because I said, Mom, they will be his custodial caregivers. You can remain his wife and I can remain his daughter. And I mean my father's last 18 months of life. He was happy and he was well cared for. And my mother's role and my role, it was one that we just walked alongside. One of the hard things was, as I know many people, we want to correct them. If they say the grass is blue and it isn't, we want to convince them that it's green. My husband and I had gone to some training when my father was diagnosed. This is before my husband's brain cancer. And one of the comments they made, not to encourage us not to correct the person we're caring for, they called it love lies. That we simply say it's raining and it's not raining. Well, I love it when it rains, don't you, Daddy? I wasn't telling him it's not raining, Dad. In his eyes, it was raining. In his mind, I entered his space. I think too often we try to get them back into our space. And that is something I wanted to try to do as long as I could, because there were moments where he was lucid and he was in my world, in my space. But more often than not, I knew I had to enter his space. And that was, as this overachieving type A kind of person, to learn to breathe, to learn to just sit and be present, because that's all that we have is this moment. It's the present. And that's why it's a gift. That's why it's called the present. It is the gift if we truly know how to accept it. And caring for my father that way really set the tone. So when my husband's care became more intense, and really he, again, was very easy to take care of. Following a surgery, the doctor said, he'll either come out swearing like a sailor or you'll get the best of him, because it was the right side of the language.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was hospitalized for 5 weeks. I never came home. And the farm, we had neighbors taking care of livestock and the farm. So all of those, managing all of those moving parts was something I did. But I stayed up there near him rather than come home. We call it Macaulay Inn here where I'm at, like a Ronald McDonald House. And so my dad, mom would come visit me every day. They always took me to lunch. That was my tether to reality outside of caregiving. As you can tell, I have a lot to say about this.
It is one of those things that there is so much to share whenever you have been able to learn so much from your season. And it sounds like it was very impactful in dealing with that control piece that you had held on to and tried to control all those environments all that time. And when we get to this point in life where caregiving overwhelms us with things that we can't control, it makes it so obvious how little control we actually have. But like you said, in the moment and in how we love and how we support those that we're caring for is really the only things that we can control. And it's not easy. And I think it's a lesson God's always trying to teach me, but I definitely am like you. I'm just used to being able to just get it done. Right. And so this season, especially of joining them where they are, changed that for me as well, of just being able to learn to be thankful for the moment and to stay in the moment and not try to make it what I wanted it to be, but rather really help to create that environment where it was the best thing for my dad.
Well, for my husband, an aspect of this caregiving for him, I'm sure your audience is familiar with the book, The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. My husband and I had done that study for his brain surgery, but we discovered we had different love languages. And so once we made those identifications, we tried to speak each other's talk. It wasn't always easy. I loved quality time, and his was service. He felt bringing home the bread and providing for his family. Those were service acts that he did. Mine was just spend some quality time with me. For him, as the worker, the farmer, he was always busy. So we struggled for many years of trying to make that communication sync. And as I was in that caregiver role for him, as the years progressed, he went through 4.5 years of aggressive treatment for brain cancer. At the times, I recalled this book, this study by Gary Chapman. It struck me that my husband and I were beginning to speak each other's language. I was on the serving end. I could do service for him, care for him. He lost the left peripheral vision of both eyes, so he couldn't drive, he couldn't work. So he lost all of that abilities working on the farm without someone there right by him. And he, in turn, spoke the language of quality time. When I think back on that, we had conversations about it. And it was like we both could say, we now know what each other felt. Now we communicate better. We bought this 60-acre farm an hour or so out of Detroit, and we wanted to raise our sons here. We did. We have 3 sons. They're married. But we were so busy working, farming, raising all the things you did, we didn't appreciate it. But boy, we found a lot of quality time to just sit out on a hillside and have a picnic. We found a lot of quality time, even for my father, walking around the facility, going for rides. I would say, Dad, this looks just like North Carolina, where he grew up as a child, taking him to those hills. And I think those are moments that it helps us as the caregiver realize I can't change what is happening. And the only one I really have control of is me. I mean, in my case, it's something that I could say, be present just right now And one thing at the facility, when he passed, people had donated some funds. So my mother and I decided we wanted to give a great big grandfather clock in their meeting room. And the women thought it was a wonderful idea. And the plaque that they inscribed on that clock for my father was W. Perry Price and his date of birth and his death date. And it said Perry's time. Because my father, in his care, he could understand what might be asked of him, but it took time for him to do it. So if we were to say, Perry, it's time for dinner, and we're ready to get him up and get going, that would be when you'd have the struggle.
Yep.
The ladies learned, and we learned quickly, give him half a minute. And before you knew it, he was getting up out of the chair himself. So it was the processing of the information that he was hearing. He could not replicate what was needed. They would just say, Perry, we're going to have dinner now. And they would walk away. Well, he would get up and follow them to the dinner table. And so they said they discovered Perry's time was the phrase they used because they said everyone living there needs Perry's time. They were taking residents and putting them in our time, what we need to be done. And so I often think of that Perry's time when they said everybody deserves Perry's time. And that's a tribute to my dad and the quality care that they provided. And so I use that even with my husband's care. He had to learn everything all over again. It was amazing. He was a brilliant man and still was. After time, you would think if we had conversations, you and I, Raina, you would wonder which of us had the brain surgery because he was that brilliant of a man. And everyone admired him for that and wondered how he would take living with these deficits that he had after this surgery. I wanted to make sure I mentioned that because that's something at any caregiver's time and place. Take a breath, take a beat, and then say, well, let's go now. And then it's almost like an invitation rather than a get your arm under their arm and say, well, we go.
Yeah.
No one like
when we have an agenda that we're pushing, then they are going to push their agenda back. And if their agenda is not going to match ours because we're pushy. And so I used to tell my sister that my dad lost his hurry button.
Yeah.
I just had to remember there was no hurry left. And so we just had to take the time that it took to get things done, because as soon as you tried to be in a hurry, that was when it didn't happen. So what would you say was most surprising to you about caregiving?
I think I have to go back to the type A person. I thought I could do it all. When I had the two men I loved the most in desperate need of care, I soon realized I couldn't do that. And that's when certainly that I alluded to this passage in Exodus there, you need to seek help. I realized caregiving isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. And if in a marathon you pace yourself, you don't realize it's going to happen in a split second. You realize the long haul of this. That was something when I could grasp my head around, that was helpful to me to not try to think I had to do everything. Like in a marathon race, you have people cheering you on. We would have friends that he worked with that would take him to car shows. And they were very attentive, knowing that he couldn't see on the left side of both eyes. So they knew we walked always on his left side so he wouldn't bump someone or hurt himself. In a local community that he was in a machinist club with. Once he was able to be mobile, I certainly made it a point to drive there. These men, they would have dinner. I would go to the local mall and read or walk or shop. But they attended to conversations with him, opening up those windows for opportunities for others to help. Being wise to use that time to feed myself.
Yes.
Emotionally, physically, spiritually was so important. And hospice was very good at that in the last 16 months of my husband's life. When we knew he could not endure any more treatments, his neuro-oncologist had initially said to us, I want you to write your philosophy of life. I typed it up for him, and it was a little short paragraph to the effect that I have lived a wonderful life. And I want to use every tool in the toolkit to attack this demon. But I know there'll be a time when we have to talk about the quality of my life, not the quantity of my life. And then he said to me, Jackie, we're not dying with this. We are living with this. And live we did. My husband said, I understand hospice will help my wife and my family care for me better and help them journey these last days with me better. I want to sign up for that. That's a gift, Raina, that I know not many people have. And so I want to encourage people to look at not hospice as a death warrant. I have many experiences and family members where they go on hospice for care and then they go off of hospice. Every 6 months, there is an evaluation done. And so my husband was on hospice for 16 months in our home, and they sent a help aide 5 days a week. I had caregivers that came on Sunday mornings so that my mother and I could go to church and have brunch together. We had people that came in so I could attend a Bible study from hospice. They knew that I could be stronger when I was personally fed by my spirit and with food and companionship with people on the outside. And in fact, it was like when you come back in again and you see them brand new, it's like all new. I would encourage anyone, even if it's full-time in your home, to just step outside and take a deep breath. My granddaughters love this saying, inhale blue skies, exhale gray. And even if you just can do that and say, thank you, Lord, I take in the good and I release the bad. I know those sound simple, but sometimes that's all we have time to do.
The better we are at accepting help, the more of those windows of time that we have. But sometimes it is difficult to realize who could be helpful. I think
Yes.
sometimes we're looking for specific people, or we think somebody needs to be trained. We're able to benefit from his friendships that had already been in place for years, and to continue those friendships and allow them to continue, even though things looked different. How they spent their time together wasn't the same, but that friendship was still the same. And I think we have to really step back and look at how can we do that? How can we continue to support our loved ones' relationships outside of our own? I think so many times as caregivers, we have a tendency to step in, take over everything, and not let them have their own identity outside of what we're trying to do. So I love those examples because they are really, really powerful in helping them to maintain their independence and their dignity, as well as taking care of ourselves and using that time for our self-care. Can you share one time when it really stands out to you where God just showed up for you in your caregiving?
Well, with both of the men, as I said, I loved my father. I remember going for a walk one day around the neighborhood, and a cat was drinking out of a bird bath. My father broke out into hysterics at that, which when you think about a cat eating out of the bird's bath, like, okay, I'm going to lick this up until one of these birds land in. Bingo, there you go. Every time I see a bird bath, I just bring back that funny little memory. And it seems very small, but it was powerful to me. So I think I said to you, my husband and I, we learned to treasure every moment, especially here on the farm. We have a son who was born in August during the Perseid meteor shower. And when he was a child, a baby, we would wake him up in the middle of the night, bundle him up, his little face out under the cloth, and look at the night sky, all the stars, shooting stars. And we would say, this is the sky's birthday celebration for you, Jace. And so my husband and I said, we have to continue that. We have to honor that. And we would do simple things like that, where there were years of working and busyness that we didn't even reflect on the joys that we had in our lives. We were so busy trying to accomplish something else. So those are some of the things when I see the meteor showers, that's a moment back to where I was with him. And I think journaling, certainly it has been a part of the caregiving role. If I were to say something that has helped me or surprised me, I have gone back to see journal entries where I have felt at the bottom of a pit. And I can now look back and say, by the grace of God, his faithfulness, he pulled you to where you are today. And so writing, that's where this author journey came from, following my mother's death. My mother, she had a heart condition. She died suddenly. And I had a chance to go on a pilgrimage to Israel following my mother's passing. And It was wonderful. Visit sites I had read about in the Bible. But we had traveled to the eastern side of the Sea of Galilee, and up in the cliffs there were caves where the demon-possessed man may have lived. And when he saw Jesus coming across the water, he ran down. And the demons, I'm sure your listeners know this story, but Christ cast the demons out of the man into the swine, and the legions of swine were cast into the sea. And the community didn't like that because this was a pagan community. That was their livestock, their livelihood. They wanted Jesus to get out of town. And when they got there and saw that man, demon-possessed, could not be contained, he was fully clothed, of sound mind. And when Jesus got ready to leave, he wanted to go too. I said those words. I wanted to go. I couldn't imagine living, breathing without my husband or my mother or my father. But Christ's words to him were what were spoken to me that day. You're to go home and tell others what I've done for you. And that, Raina, is what my author, writing, speaking journey is all about. Telling others how faithful God has been, even when I haven't been faithful to him. How powerful his love is to override, and the calm and comfort he provides when we allow him to do that in our lives. And so I would encourage your readers, the things that I alluded to that I do for my dad and my husband, create your own medical notebook. You're keeping track of what you're doing. Those annual appointments, go to them, follow up on them. Sometimes we're just depleted, but we have to take care of ourselves. And as a caregiver, you can't pour from an empty cup. And so while they're still living, you need to do that. But even after that, because this caregiving, it has an end date at some point. It might not be nice to think about that, but I want to be able to think that I've tried my best. Moments of prayer, it isn't just when you have the Bible open or when you're on your knees or in a church pew. Breath prayers that I can recall helping my husband in the shower and his beautiful curly head of hair, drying it for him, and remember thinking, Lord, let him see the love of God and not the fatigue in my eyes when he sees me again. God honored those prayers. I know that. And I would encourage your listeners to create those lists of things that that can help you become closer to the Lord. So I would encourage your listeners to do that. Exercise. And of course, there's my pickleball.
Yeah.
I learned pickleball after the death of my husband and my mother. And I fell in love.
I love it as well. And I think it's an amazing sport. So people need to pick up their paddles and give it a shot, because I always tell people you don't have to be athletic, but you can find people to help you improve. It is just so much fun. So Jackie, go ahead and share with us how they can get your books and how they can stay in touch with you.
Well, I thank you, Raina, for the opportunity to address your audience, but they can reach me at JackieFreemanAuthor.com. I'm on all of the socials that same way, and I would love to hear from them. On my website, there is a sample, Jackie Freeman Author, a sample devotion of the latest book. I've written 9 books, various devotional books, children's books, but also there are some resources.
Well, I encourage you to reach out to Jackie and find all of her great resources at JackieFreemanAuthor.com. Thank you, listeners, for joining us today for a Season of Caring podcast with Stories of Hope with Jackie, where there is hope to live content, love well, and care without regrets. If you have financial, legal, or medical questions, please be sure to contact your local professionals and take heart in your season of caring.